Well, hey there, welcome to the Host Project as we're progressing along. There are days when you see lots of progress and days when you don't see much progress. That's the nature of renovation. But we've made some big strides. So we've got insulation upstairs. We've already constructed the attic and the attic stairs are in, stripped all of the interior lining, reframed some walls where we've needed to, dealt with the subsidence in the floor. Plumber and electrician have both done their first fix. A little bit more insulation to do. Plasterboard, jib plasterboard arrives this week. So next week, well, we're ready to start lining. We're up here inside the roof space of the Huis Project, and the key component to a warm, dry, comfortable home has got to be insulation. So I've been really diligent around doing the ceiling insulation. We know from research that about 45% of heat loss from a house is typically through the ceiling, through the roof space. So underneath this attic floor, I've installed the Green Stuff ceiling insulation, and you can see it around the perimeter here. Really important that the insulation extends right to the top plate, that it's neatly laid in between all of the joists. And in fact, in this instance here, I'll probably do another layer over the top. So I'm crossing my insulation over so that I've got no thermal bridging from the original timber in here. It's going to make a massive difference to this house, considering that when I first looked up here, there was a few random patches of insulation. So a complete continuous blanket of insulation here is exactly what this house needs. When I first had a look at the house, it was a given that I needed to replace the roof. It looks pretty bad from the outside. But then spending a bit of time up here, the natural lighting that you get through the various holes, through the rust and the missing nails, has emphasized the fact that it really does need a new roof. And one of the ways sometimes of describing a good house is good hat, good feet. So I've got solid foundations, and now I'm going to give this house a new hat in colour steel, and I'm actually going for Tidal Drift as the colour that I'm going to choose, in a matte finish, and I'm using a true oak profile, so it'll have some of those elements of the old, and in the matte finish I actually think on an old cottage that's going to look really cool. One of the challenges to getting a fully insulated house on this our house project is that I've got different types of walls to deal with. So I've got some standard conventional timber framing. That's relatively easy. I'll just cut and fit my Green Stuff insulation in there. But into these old sarked walls, I've got to come up with a different solution. So I'm going to use heat savers. They're going to foam fill all of these walls to give me really good, solid, continuous insulation in these tricky to reach spaces. We've been up in the roof space. Some of that's accessible, some of it's not. I've got some skillion roofs, I've got some underfloor, and because I wanted to get to all of the areas in this house, I've ended up actually removing the floor in order to get insulation underneath the floor in an area that wasn't accessible. With this host project, what I'm looking to achieve is a complete thermal envelope. So I need to insulate the underfloor, I need to insulate the walls, and I need to insulate the roof. And I'm going to insulate some of those internal partitions as well for soundproofing. And to do that, I need different solutions for each of those particular challenges. So for example, this is ceiling insulation, where you want the big loft up in the ceiling. This is wall insulation for the exterior walls, so it's a batt that goes into the 90mm framing, and this is my underfloor insulation. In this part of the house, it's actually really close to the ground, and we did discover, after we discovered some rot in the floor joists, that in fact the dirt was too close to the underside of the floor. So we've lifted the original kauri flooring, we've replaced any rot that's there, we've excavated out about 2 cubic meters of dirt in order to get a little bit of airflow under there. Then we've put a vapor barrier, polythene down on top of the dirt, we've relayed the joists, and now we've used the Green Stuff underfloor insulation, which we can fit from the top because this part is not accessible. The rest of the house, it's not an easy job, but you can get in there. So in order to complete the thermal envelope, the only option in this instance was to remove the floor and work from the top. The rest of the house I can work from underneath. There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of months around the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act of 2016, and the deadline for the installation of underfloor insulation and roof insulation was the 1st of July 2019. And what the Act states is that in accessible spaces, a landlord must install underfloor and ceiling insulation. What's interesting about this part of the project is that this isn't actually accessible. The only way I've been able to do the underfloor insulation here is to remove the flooring and work from the top. So, as a rental property, the limited access would mean that it's not feasible to install underfloor insulation, and the Act won't require you to lift the floor to do it. So this part would have been uninsulated. The balance of the house, where you can safely get under there, would get some insulation. But we know that insulation works best when it's continuous, so for this property, the best solution was lifting the floor, doing this part from the top, doing the rest from underneath. One of the challenges with the Huis Project is finding an effective form of heating for the house. And the open fireplace, as much as I love it for all its character and all of its history, is not a particularly efficient form of heating. So I'm going to install an ASEA fireplace, a gas fireplace, into this opening. The first thing I need to do to enable that to happen is remove the firebox. I'm keeping the structure of the chimney, but I need to remove that to begin the installation process.